The Church at 1002 is a weekly preaching series designed to help you translate the unchanging gospel in an ever-changing world. These messages will help you navigate the challenges of life with the truth of Scripture so that you can live out the way of Jesus in the places you live, work, and play, and allow the world to experience the hope of the gospel through your life. If you find these messages helpful, then subscribe to our channel, like the message, and share it with someone else that needs to experience the unchanging gospel for their ever-changing world. Welcome to the Church at 1002. Hey, Church at 1002, Pastor Matt here, and I am so pumped that you decided to join us as we are digging into this series through the Gospel of John. And we're up to John chapter 2, which is a pretty cool story because it shows the first miracle of Jesus. And it's a miracle in a place you wouldn't quite expect, but it gives you a powerful picture of not just who Jesus is, but what Jesus even means in our lives today. And so as I was reading through John chapter 2, what you have to realize is John chapter 2, the whole scene is centered around a wedding. And as I was thinking about this, I was remembering my own wedding. I got married 12 years ago. And when we got married, we were both living in different places. And so we decided to converge on the place that my wife grew up, Jacksonville, Florida, and to do the wedding there. But neither of us were local. So her mom planned so many details of this wedding. It wasn't even funny. And then my mom came in and planned so many details of the rehearsal. But what was so cool was this wedding, because everybody was coming from out of town, ended up being this massive event, a 3-day long, almost felt like celebration and party. The first night, all our groomsmen and her maids of honor and different bridal party came in, and we threw this big party around Jacksonville. And then all of a sudden we did the rehearsal. Now, normally a rehearsal dinner, I know, is kind of like limited to the family and the people in the wedding, but we had so many people coming from out of town that my parents decided, well, anybody that's coming from out of town gets to come. And so all of a sudden, it was like we had this huge opening party for the event of the wedding. There was so much food, and I will never forget at that rehearsal dinner when we were eating this really good food, and then my parents were like, well, what can we do with some of the leftovers? And they're like, well, you can't really take the leftovers. And some of my groomsmen were like, there's a prime rib sitting over there that's got Matt and Liza's name on it. So later I found out my groomsmen had taken the rest of the prime rib and put it in the trunk. I'll never forget that. It was so fun, but the celebration didn't stop there. And then the next day we got married, people hung out on the beach, and then we had a huge reception that was just beautiful and filled with more food and more drink. And as I think about that wedding event, I will always remember the celebration it was, how every guest had more than enough, and how the party extended over days. In fact, as I think about that wedding celebration, it's a picture of what it would have been like at this wedding Jesus was going to. Because oftentimes we think of weddings as like a one-day event, except for a select few within the wedding party. But back then, when you were a part of a wedding, this was a multi-day affair where your entire community was invited to celebrate. The celebration would have lasted for days. And the requirement of this celebration was simple: make sure you have enough food and drink for everyone. And that's the setting of this wedding that Jesus has been invited to. A wedding of a family friend who otherwise is unnamed in the text. But something happens that creates what could have been a huge cultural snafu that could have followed this young couple for the rest of their lives had it not been for Jesus stepping in. So let's dig in right now. We're going to dig into John chapter 2. I want to read the text with you, dig into some of those points, and then talk about how that applies to our lives today. So let's open up John chapter 2. We're going to look in the English Standard Version this week, and it says this: on the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus also was invited to the wedding with his disciples. And that, I guess, would have been common, right? Jesus comes, he brings all his disciples with him. Here's this huge wedding, these disciples that have just started following him, as we talked about last week. And it says, when the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. And Jesus said to her, woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come. Now, understand a couple things. Number one, as we talked about earlier, weddings were multi-day affairs, and they were big celebrations, not just for the couple and their family, but for the entire community. And so if a couple didn't have enough for all of the guests that had been invited, it would have been a shameful thing, not just for the weekend, but it would have been one of those things because they lived in that community that would have followed them around for the rest of their lives. And so here, when Mary's coming in, realize that this has been a several day wedding party, and now they've run out. But this is why Mary is saying it's such a big deal. She sees this unnamed couple, and she's saying this can't be how they start their lives together, with this mark of not being able to have enough for those that came out. And so she goes to the one person she knew could actually do something: Jesus. And as he goes there, you hear that statement from Jesus, right? Woman, what does this have to do with me? Now, really quickly, I need you to understand, this is not Jesus being disrespectful to his mother. And so don't make that a takeaway from this text, especially kids. If you're listening to this, don't take this as a takeaway. But rather, Jesus is saying this in a compassionate way. And he's just saying, it's not necessarily my time yet. But even though Jesus says, it's not my time, kind of giving you the impression like, don't know that I can really do anything about this right now. Mary trusts. Mary trusts in who Jesus is and the man she knows he is. And she goes over to the servants and she just gives a simple statement to the servants. She says to the servants, do whatever he tells you. Do whatever he tells you. So there were these 6 stone water jars there for Jewish rites of purification, each holding about 20 to 30 gallons. Now, I need you to imagine this for a second. There are these massive stone jars, about the size of a trash can you would leave outside on the curb for the garbage men to come and pick up trash. 20 to 30 gallons. That's the size we're talking about. And there are 6 of these things out there. And so what these would have been used for was this. They would have been filled with water. They were stone jars so that if people came and washed, they would be washed and ritually clean, because you would use them for washing. So they were jars that were pure. They wouldn't, contain germs or contamination and things like that. And so when you dipped in, when you washed your hands, when you got ready for the Jewish rites of purification, you would be pure. So think about this. These are stone jars that people are dipping their hands into, washing their hands off, trying to be ready for these events. And so here they are. And Jesus looks at the servants and he says this to the servants. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. And they're like, okay, we have a wine issue. I don't really know what filling these things with water is really going to do. But what did Mary say? She said, do whatever he tells you. And they filled them up to the brim. So you've got these massive, heavy stone jars filled to the brim with water. And they're stone jars used for what? Washing your hands and yourself, right? And he said to them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. Now, think about that for a second. You're the servant, right? You've just filled these with water, so you know what's inside. Now Jesus is asking you to take the essentially hand water, to dip it out in a cup, and take it to the master of ceremonies for the entire wedding. Because the master of ceremonies would have been the one that was leading the wedding. He would have been the one that tasted everything to give it its approval for the people at the wedding. And so essentially, to the most important person at the wedding, you're taking this little cup of what is probably dirty drinking water, and you're taking it over to him, and you're saying, hey, drink some of this. That had to be a huge act of faith, right? But it says, so they took it. And when the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine. And he did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. The master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, everyone serves the good wine first. And when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." This is the first of his signs Jesus did at Cana in Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Now, this is just crazy when you think about it, right? I mean, here is Jesus. He's just done this incredible miracle, and the servants are just blown away when they see this because they know what was in that jar. Those ritual purifying jars were filled with water that no one would dream of drinking. And yet Jesus took what no one would dream of drinking and he turned it into not just wine, but the best wine this person had ever tasted. The wine that he declared to be the greatest wine at the wedding. And it's amazing to me when you think about this miracle, because when his disciples saw it and they knew what happened, because the servants told them and they knew what happened, they believed in Jesus. This was Jesus' first miracle, but it's amazing when you think about this miracle, because a couple things stick out to me. And I've preached on this text for years, and there's always something different. But this week, there were three things specifically that really stuck out to me. And the first was this. This miracle shows the abundance of Jesus' compassion for unnamed people. The abundance of Jesus' compassion for unnamed people. See, in the text, these people aren't important enough to have their names in there. They're just the bride and the bridegroom at a wedding. Family, friends, but they're unnamed otherwise. And it's really easy to think that God only looks down on those who are important, or God only has time for the important. But when you read this story, what you see is just another picture where God sees those that oftentimes would go unseen. And God has compassion on people that other people would forget. And so here at the base of this miracle, there's a miracle happening in the life of this couple. Because now this couple, who would have lived the rest of their lives with the shame of knowing they didn't have enough to provide for those that came to the wedding, are now being celebrated because they've brought out the best wine. And you can imagine with 6 20 to 30 gallon jars, how much longer that celebration went. There might have been some left over. I remember a preacher one time said that. And he said, imagine with that wine left over. Each time they would dip in there, and they would drink a little bit of that wine left over from their wedding. And they would remember that night. And they would remember what God had done in their lives. How powerful that would be. See, God has compassion, even on those who would normally go unseen. Because God sees those who normally go unseen. I was reminded of that as I was reading through my Bible in a Year reading plan, and I was in Genesis chapter 16 in the plan that we're going through together at Church at 10:02, and I was reading the story of Sarah and Hagar, and Sarai and Hagar was this servant. Sarah couldn't have a baby, and so she said, hey, have a baby with my servant Hagar, and then Hagar gets pregnant, and Sarai is, of course, wildly jealous and angry and demands that she be sent away. So Abram sends her away because whatever Sarah wants, right? And so here is Hagar, not knowing where she's going to go, trying to escape because of this, master that no longer loves her. And says she's sitting there, and the angel of the Lord found her by the spring in the wilderness. And he said to her, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? And he has this interaction with her, where he shows his love for her and his compassion for her and encourages her to go back, trusting not in Abraham and Sarai, but trusting in God. And it says after that encounter, Genesis 16:13, it says that Hagar called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are a God of seeing. For she said, truly here I have seen him who looks after me. See, there's a lot in a name. And she's saying, you're a God who saw someone that the rest of the world would normally overlook. And here in this miracle, once again, Jesus is showing he is that God. A God who has an abundance of compassion, even for those who would go unseen. More than that, the other thing that this miracle showed me, or really stuck out to me this time, was just the abundance of God's grace. Like, did they need 6 full stone water jars toward the ending days of the wedding, filled with 20 to 30 gallons of wine each? I don't know that they needed that much. But you see, that's the way it is with God. When God pours his grace in, he doesn't pour in just enough. He pours in more than we could ever need, pours it in to the point of overflowing. Those servants trusted God enough to go out and fill those stone water jars till they were sloshing over at the brim, and God took that and he made it into the best and greatest wine possible, showing just the abundance of God's grace. See, God used what was there for ritual purification, meaning something that was used to make right with God. And he did a miracle that showed the world when it comes to God's grace, God is always going to give an abundance of grace, an abundance of love, an abundance of compassion, because when God gives, he gives in abundance. And I think as Christians, we need to lean into that reality. Because I think sometimes when it comes to God, we think we have just enough when it comes to grace, just enough when it comes to God's compassion. And when you think you have just enough, sometimes you think you could lose it. But the reality is this: you have more grace and more compassion poured into your life through Jesus than you could ever need. An abundance of it, filled to overflowing. And when you take time to meditate on that reality, the abundance of God's love for you, the abundance of God's grace for you, it changes your life and the way you're able to live with the world around you. So my encouragement to you would be, as you read this miracle, take more time to just meditate on the abundance of God's grace for your life today. And realize that that same abundance of grace that existed in John chapter 2 exists in your life today through Jesus and his love. And then finally, and I think the last and I don't know, maybe the most important point, at least equally important, is that God has the ability to create new things out of old. God has the ability to create new things out of old things. Spectacular things out of common things. See, the reality is, you may feel like you're not much to offer, but God is looking at you going, allow me to make you new. Allow me to take the dirt and the filth of your life, the brokenness you may feel in your life, the unworthiness you may feel in your life, and allow me to step in through the love and the forgiveness of Jesus and to make you new. Because God can take even the most common things and make them extraordinary. Through the love and the forgiveness of Jesus, he can make new wine in your life as well. As you read through the story, take some time this week. Read back through John chapter 2. Read through John as we're reading through it together and see what God allows to stick out to you. But just remember that we have a God who is abundant in his compassion, abundant in his grace, and he is able to make lives new through the compassion and grace he has to give. And so as you're reflecting on this message, I want you to think about a couple of questions and take some time if you're sitting around a group of people to just discuss the questions around you. Or if you want, open up a journal and a pen or something to write with and just think through these questions a little bit as you're meditating on this text and on this message. And the first question is this: where do you need God to see you today? Do you feel like there's an area of your life or something that you need God to see? Where do you need God to see you, or where do you need to remember that God sees you in a way that's filled with compassion and grace? Question 2, what stuck out to you in today's message? Was there something that just popped out to you over and above the rest? Take an opportunity to share that with the people around you. And then finally, third and finally, my favorite question: how will you live this out this week? How can you live out the abundant compassion, grace, and new life that God's given you this week? Hey, it's been a joy to hang out with you right here at the church at 1002. I want to encourage you, if you're here because you're trying to grow in your faith, we've got some other great resources for you to grow in your faith. So if you click like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, you can not only catch more Church at 1002 messages, but you can also see some of those resources we're releasing each week. Every Wednesday, we're going to have a new How to Read the Bible series that you can check out. Also, if you check in the link below, you can actually find a Bible journal and reading plan PDF that's free for you to download. That's just another resource we want to give you to help you as you're seeking to grow in your faith. And of course, if we can help you with anything, jump on Church at 1002 online, and you can reach out to us right there. And if you find these messages to be a blessing, I want to encourage you, like and subscribe, and then take an opportunity to share it with somebody else that needs this message. Because if it was an impact to you, it could be an impact to somebody else. And then if you'd like to be a part of supporting more messages like these, go to 1002.church. That's 1002.church, and support Church at 1002, because your support allows us to release more videos like these. So it's been a joy to hang out with you right here. I just want to leave you right now with a blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you with his favor and bring you his peace.